1991, New York City. In the early 90s, the whole city was trying to move on from a decade defined by crime. But with murders climbing to an all-time high of over 2,600 in 1990, things were headed in the wrong direction. The same could be said of the Knicks, who'd been a disappointment throughout the 80s and had just gotten bounced in the first round of the playoffs in Stu Jackson's second year as head coach. But while the city was still 4 years from turning things around under a new mayor who would become notorious for his tough stance on crime, Knicks fans wouldn't have to wait so long, and toughness would be the key to their turnaround as well. The Knicks' turnaround from in the 80s to legendary in the 90s was due to one move. When Dave Checketts became the Knicks GM, he set his sights on signing Pat Riley to be the team's head coach, but it would come at a steep price. Riley was working for NBC and wanted to not only be the highest paid coach in the league, but he wanted the Knicks to buy him a home in the New York City area. That's not cheap. Riley also wanted a book deal, a potential movie deal since the club was owned by Paramount at the time, and he demanded that the team issued polo shorts actually be made by Ralph Lauren, not that generic bullshit everyone else had on. On top of that, he wanted his laundry and dry cleaning expenses covered. That was going to be expensive. But his biggest request? He said he only would join the Knicks if Pat Ewing agreed to stay with the team. Though the Knicks declined to foot the laundry bill, they did get their man, and Ewing too. Did the 90s Knicks owe their toughness to the show Soul Train? Pat Riley was a big fan of Motown and the show Soul Train. When he became head coach in 1991, he instituted a drill inspired by the Soul Train line, where participants on the show would line up while people danced between them toward the camera. Only Riley's drill was called Suicide Alley and wasn't designed to show off fancy footwork, but to toughen up the team. In the drill, 6 players would line up on each side of the lane while another was told to run through at full speed. The players on each side of the lane were instructed to throw elbows and shoulders at the runner, and more than one Knicks player was said to have bailed out moments before entering Suicide Alley. With guys like Xavier McDaniel, Patrick Ewing, Anthony Mason, and Charles Oakley participating in the drill, it's a wonder nobody got their head knocked off. The Knicks of the 90s were the pro basketball equivalent of the Bad News Bears. Outside of Patrick Ewing, the 90s Knicks were always less than impressive on paper. Xavier McDaniel was a hot and cold player known for dropping 30 one night and 4 in the next. John Starks was another streaky player who made his way onto the team after bagging groceries and jumping between JUCOs. Greg Anthony may have played on one of the best college teams ever, but he was known to be a terrible shooter. And of course, you had Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason, both small school stars that were so well known for their toughness and flagrant fouls that their skill sets and footwork were often overlooked. But this franchise of cast-offs would establish the Knicks as the second best Eastern Conference team of the decade and give New Yorkers hope each year, even if they didn't ever get the ring New York deserved. John Starks had one of the most unlikely journeys to the NBA. Starks played just 1 year of high school ball and only got into 2 varsity games. He used loans to attend Rogers State College, where he made the school's practice squad before getting expelled and heading to Northern Oklahoma. He averaged 11 points per game there, but got expelled again. Starks started bagging groceries and then enrolled at Tulsa Junior College. A local coach saw Starks in an intramural game and offered him a tryout. Starks made the team, but rarely got off the bench until his wedding day. Starks' wedding was scheduled the same day that team had an away game in Kansas that was expected to be canceled, and it wasn't until his reception was underway that he got a call that the game was back on. He and his wife arrived at halftime down 25. Starks dropped 22 in the second half, earned a scholarship to Oklahoma State, and then bounced around the CBA and NBA before becoming a pivotal player for the Knicks. Anthony Mason had one of the wildest journeys to the NBA. After his first 2 years at Tennessee State, Mason got motivated by the birth of his first son and stepped his game up, probably because he realized he was going to need to get a real job if he didn't go pro. He averaged 28 points per game his senior year and got drafted 53rd overall in the 1988 draft by Portland. After failing to make the Blazers, Mace played in Turkey and Venezuela with quick stops with the Nets and the Nuggets, a stop in the CBA, and another stop in the USBL before his GM told a Knicks scout to check him out. Mason dropped 36 on the night the Knicks scout was in attendance, but there was a problem. He went to dinner with reps from an Israeli team and signed a contract moments before he got a call to join the Knicks Summer League team. Luckily for Mason and the Knicks, the Israeli team let Mason walk, and the rest is history. This superstar once put the untouchable Pat Riley in his place. After the Bulls eliminated the Knicks in '93 for the third straight season on their way to their third straight championship, Pat Riley decided to take his family to Hawaii, where he copped the presidential suite at one of Maui's best resorts. But just one day into his trip, Riley got a call from the manager telling him his family needed to move to another room. I wouldn't want that job. And upset Riley cooled off by heading to the pool. And while his children swam, he peered up at his former suite's oversized balcony. As if on cue, balcony doors swung open and a man walked out in a bathrobe to enjoy the view. That man who waved to Pat Riley from above was the same man that just sent the Knicks home, the one and only Michael Jordan. The good news for Riley, Jordan would announce his move to play baseball before the next season started. The 90s Knicks played in some of the craziest Game 5s of all time, but this one may have been the craziest. In Game 5 of the 94 finals, the Knicks and the Rockets met up at the Garden with the series tied at 2. But just before halftime, the game was upstaged when O.J. Simpson, who was wanted for murder, took the Jakes on a cross-highway chase. The Juice must have had ways because he avoided all the traffic that day. NBC moved the finals to an in-picture window to focus on the chase with Tom Brokaw's commentary. At MSG, fans left their seats to watch the chase on TV live near the concession stands. Even players and coaches were asking fans for updates. Few know this, but during the chase, OJ tried to call Bob Costas to get on the air. But a junior tech picked up the phone and hung up on the legendary football player, thinking the call was a hoax. That wasn't the Jerky Boys, buddy. The Knicks would go on to win the game, but would lose the next two in Houston in typical heartbreaking Knicks fashion. John Starks is one of the most beloved Knicks of all time, but it's still hard to forgive him for his meltdown in the biggest series of his career. In Game 1 of the '94 finals, the notoriously streaky Starks had an off night, shooting just 3 for 18 in a 7-point Knicks loss. In Game 6, with a chance to win the championship, Starks took a 3, down 2, as time expired with Akeem Olajuwon challenging his shot. Olajuwon barely grazed the ball, but affected it enough that it airballed. But it was Game 7 of that series that sticks with most Knicks fans. Starks had arguably the worst game of his career, shooting just 2 for 18 and 0 for 11 from 3, while finishing with just 8 points in what would be a 6-point loss to the Rockets and a missed opportunity for the Knicks to bring a title to its desperate fan base. We still love you though, Johnny. Now, you know about John Starks' collapse in Game 7 of the '94 NBA Finals, but do you know why Pat Riley didn't sub him out? Many figured Riley was determined to ride or die with the guy who had carried his team to the finals, but another story may truly explain Riley's stubborn stance. Starks' backup in '94 was Rolando Blackman, a 4-time All-Star who joined the Knicks toward the end of his career. Despite his declining abilities, Blackman was still capable of outperforming Starks on that day. But after the Knicks beat the Pacers in the deciding game of the conference finals, Blackman had asked Riley if families could join the players in Houston. When Riley told Blackman no, the role player challenged his coach, and then Riley doubled down on his decision for all to witness. Many Knicks believed that the argument was the reason Riley never pulled Starks. Riley has acknowledged the decision was the worst of his career, and despite numerous efforts to apologize, Blackman has never responded to Riley's apology. Pat Riley's departure from the Knicks was so disrespectful. Moments after the Pacers defeated the Knicks in the 95 playoffs, Riley called a friend from the Knicks team bus requesting an intro to the owner of the Heat. He told his friend he wanted out of New York, while his players sat just rows behind him. Riley wanted $50 million over 10 years, 10% ownership of the team, and the title of team president. He also wanted the owner to buy his homes in LA and New York and get him limos to and from games, as well as a $300 a day per diem. Bro, you're already getting 50 mil. Stop being greedy. Days later, Riley faxed his resignation to the Knicks. Yes, faxed. When Riley's communications with the Heat got leaked, New York filed tampering charges. The Heat were forced to hand over cash and their first round pick in 96, which the Knicks used to draft Walter McCarty. The Heat have won the battle, but they wouldn't win the war. The Knicks of the 90s were the pro basketball equivalent of the Bad News Bears. In the late 90s, the Knicks had Latrell Sprewell, cast off by the Warriors after choking out his coach. Marcus Camby, a number 2 overall draft pick who was traded after suffering through injuries and what we'll call a rumored lack of motivation his first 2 years. And Chris Childs, a recovering alcoholic that bounced around the CBA for years before making an NBA roster. But this franchise of cast-offs would establish the Knicks as the second best Eastern Conference team of the decade and give New Yorkers hope each year, even if they didn't ever get the ring New York deserved. Did you know former Georgetown alums Patrick Ewing and Alonzo Mourning almost teamed up on the Knicks? The Knicks kicked off their 95-96 season under Don Nelson with a 10-2 record. But behind the impressive record was a team in dismay, and the organization even went so far as to provide a trade proposal to the Charlotte Hornets for Alonzo Mourning. The Knicks were interested in the deal not only because Mourning and Ewing were friends and would have made for one of the most intimidating front lines in NBA history, but also because they knew Pat Riley and the Heat wanted Mourning. In the end, Riley would outbid the Knicks, who offered a first-round pick, Anthony Mason, and John Starks for Mourning, who instead went to the Heat in exchange for Glenn Rice, Matt Geiger, Khalid Reeves, and a first, setting the stage for a fierce rivalry in the second half of the 90s. The 96 NBA draft was one of the best in history, but the Knicks blew it in monumental fashion. The Knicks had the first-round picks of both the Spurs and the Heat in 96, giving them 3 total picks, numbers 18, 19, and 21. Before the draft, they worked out 2 high schoolers. First, Jermaine O'Neal, who came into the workout nervous until a member of the staff asked if he went to prom in an effort to break the ice. O'Neal responded that he had, and then had a great workout. The other high schooler the Knicks worked out was Kobe Bryant. When the staff member asked Kobe if he went to prom, Bryant replied, "Yeah, I took Brandy to prom." Everyone in the room knew right then he had the confidence to become an all-time great. So what did the Knicks do in the draft? Instead of trading up, they went on to draft John Wallace, Walter McCarty, and Dante Jones. Jesus Christ. Knicks fans are used to heartbreak, but the 97 playoffs may have been the biggest heartbreak of all. In the second round, the Knicks were in the closing seconds of a loss that would still leave them with a 3-2 series lead when disaster struck. After a foul shot that gave Miami a 16-point lead with less than 2 minutes to go, Charlie Ward and the Heat's P.J. Brown got into a wrestling match. Chaos ensued and several Knicks players ran onto the court, forgetting the league's new rule that required suspensions for any players that left the bench. 6 players were suspended, including 5 Knicks. The Knicks were so upset that they took the NBA to court, but they lost the ruling, of course. They were forced to sit key players in both remaining games. In a Game 6 loss, Ewing, Houston, and Johnson all had to sit. And in Game 7, they had to play without Starks and Ward. The Knicks would go on to lose the series in 7 and would have to watch as Chicago won their second straight title. From 1997 to 99, the Knicks made some of the riskiest trades in NBA history. The Knicks were one of the best franchises of the 90s, and John Starks, Charles Oakley, and Anthony Mason were vital to their success. But in 97, the Knicks traded fan favorite Mason to the Hornets for Larry Johnson, whose bad back was a major liability. Next, the Knicks shook things up by trading the beloved Oakley to the Raptors in exchange for Marcus Camby, the former College Player of the Year and #2 overall pick who had struggled in Toronto. Finally, in the middle of the 98-99 season, the Knicks traded Starks to the Warriors in exchange for Latrell Sprewell, who was coming off a one-year suspension but choking his coach. These high-risk trades brought the Knicks one of the most athletic two-way players in the game, a top-tier shot blocker with a high ceiling and a powerful big that could stretch the floor with his outside shooting. And together, they would help carry the Knicks to the finals. You bet big, you win big. These are two of the most underrated Knicks of all time, and together they led the Knicks to the 1999 finals. Latrell Sprewell was an athletic freak, known for his high-energy play, lightning speed, and emphatic dunks. He was one of the best two-way players in the game in the late 90s, starring with the Warriors and averaging 24 points, 4.5 boards, and 6 assists in the 1996-97 season. Unfortunately, a physical confrontation with P.J. Carlesimo would lead the star to be suspended for an entire season. Given a second chance, Sprewell would go on to average 18, 4, and 4 for the Knicks over 5 seasons. Allen Houston had to be one of the smoothest players of all time, and his teammates in Detroit were so pissed he left them for the Knicks that they refused to attend his wedding. Why? Because with his long frame and silky smooth shot, he may have been the key to their success. Instead, he starred for the Knicks for 9 seasons, averaging 19, 3, and 3 while shooting 40% from the three-point line. The Pacers and the Knicks had one of the most underrated rivalries of all time, which included 6 playoff matchups between the two teams from 93 to 2000. The rivalry included highlights such as John Starks headbutting Reggie Miller, Reggie Miller's showdown with Spike Lee, and Ewing's devastating Game 7 missed layup. But the most controversial moment in the rivalry came in a Game 3 matchup in the 99 Eastern Conference Finals. With 11.9 seconds remaining, Charlie Ward tried to inbound but had it tipped. The ball fell into the hands of Larry Johnson. With Antonio Davis smothering him, Johnson pump faked, took one dribble, and launched the three-pointer. The ref's whistle signaled a foul just as the ball swished through the hoop. Knicks fans went crazy as they realized Johnson would be stepping to the free throw line with a chance to give the Knicks a lead with just seconds to play. Johnson hit the shot, and the Pacers failed to get the ball to Reggie Miller. The Knicks would go on to win in 6. Many have taken issue with the foul call to this day, but not us Knicks fans. This game winner that beat the Knicks in Game 3 of the 2000 Eastern Conference Semis should have never counted. Knicks fans knew it, Heat fans knew it, but the refs didn't.
Look at this shot. It's behind the backboard, and you're not supposed to be allowed to shoot the ball behind the backboard, so the shot should have been disallowed right from the beginning.
The Knicks still won the series before falling to the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Semis, bringing an end to a roller coaster era for Knicks fans.